and really have good, authentic conversation. We want to make the time valuable. We're going to talk some tough topics that come up in this, and we're going to show some amazing stories about things that the SOF community's done to come back together to give back domestically as well. So don't hold back hard questions. And we're going to be honest, we're not the experts. If we know it and we can facilitate that conversation, great. If we can't, we will try to find somebody to help get you an answer with that question, that we can go different on that. If you're in here, if you have a question, please raise your hand. As the speakers go, kind of let them go. We'll take a quick pause after each of the three get done, but then we will also have a little bit of time for some discussion, recommendations and questions at the end as well. For anybody online, you can drop those comments in the question, and the Global SOF team is going to make sure that they get brought forward so that you can participate in the conversation as well.
Many of the topics mentioned in the team room tonight were actually brought up by the SOF Forces survey. So if you haven't taken that yet, it is still open and it is on our slide. You can use the QR code or online. It's being dropped into the chat, and we encourage you to do so. Those surveys are helpful in forging and knowing what conversations to have, what experts to bring in, and what topics to cover.
So for this section, it's called Continuous Pursuit. So this discussion is focused on the purpose of that SOF individual beyond the job, the duty, and the title. What else do you do when you are just back to being that person? Purpose is a big thing. To me, it's the mission. What is that thing? In the Army, the Navy, they give you a mission for so many years. They tell you where to go, what to do, usually how to do it. And then you take that off, and sometimes you sit and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my hands. And so you've got to find that mission. And so this group and their purpose really came together to find that mission.
And purpose is certainly at the heart of what we at the Honor Foundation do. The foundation of our programming is built on helping our fellows, their spouses, find their purpose and taking that forward with them into their next career transition. So tonight we're going to be discussing Hurricane Helene. Obviously happened months ago and devastated a large part of our state. And while we will be rebuilding those communities for quite a while, if you haven't seen the pictures, I think we have a clip. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute then. How's that? It's rare for such devastation to hit us at home, but it's no surprise that the SOF community stepped up. They went out to help in numerous ways to rescue and to rebuild. Tonight, we've got three individuals here, Christy Willis, Aaron Rimbert, and Eric Daniels. They're here to talk to us about how they got involved in the recovery and the impact that has had on them. Christy is the Station Foundation's Outstation Director for here at Fort Liberty. Aaron is an alumni of the Station Foundation Spouses Programs. And Eric is a Senior Psychological Operations Sergeant who also manages operations for an aerospace science technology corporation and a land management company. That's a mouthful. You got a lot going on. Christy, Eric, and Aaron, I turn it over to you. Come on, come join us.
You need to use their mic for online, yeah.
Can you hear me? Test, test, test. All right, so Hurricane Matthews and Florence. So we learned from our past mistakes. So when that happened, I was the only one with the flat bottom John boat. So I already had the network in place. So I got a phone call and said, hey man, do you want to go to Saluda, North Carolina with I have a heavy equipment company, obviously. And then the networks just synergized out of the blue, the Special Forces Association, the Rick Camara Foundation, not the Honor Foundation, but the Operation Healing Forces. And we all got together like, hey, how can we help? I had people giving me Starlinks, like everybody's sending me all this stuff. And so what we do is we navigate in chaos. That's what we do as soft soldiers. I'm special needs. That's what they call me. Murdoch is my call sign. So to make this, fun, even though it's sombering and very humbling, So that's what we do. We navigate the realms of chaos in everything we do, and it's nothing new for us to go out and similar to war and disaster areas. You find that white space. You build on that white space. We already knew the Helos were coming in because all the phone calls are coming in. We had the network of aviation assets and stuff where they were pushing out to different areas. But the big issue that they had was there was no roads to get to those things so they could push out further because they didn't have the infrastructure. So we loaded up all our stuff, we head out, and then we decided that we needed to split the team. So I split with my business partner, who's an actual Green Beret. He works for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. I won't name his name. But he took the equipment and went up to Sausalito, North Carolina, while I went to Moore County Airport to pick up supplies and basically manage those networks across the board, to include but not limited to. Sponsors were coming in. Hey, how can we help? What can we do? Like, what do we got? Like animal food, feed stuff was getting poured into the everything. So we got trucks, trailers, and we just convoyed all the way up there with no questions asked, just took off radios. One of the other things too is that with the network apparatuses, the communications network is very important. We were learning that the ICOM radios weren't as effective as the Starlink satellite systems to connect those loved ones that haven't talked to their loved ones. And that was like priceless. To see the look on somebody's face that made a connection with their family member was priceless. I would say, someone asked me, why do you do it? I would ask, why not? Like, that's what we do. And then additionally, it was very sad in some ways, because what do you tell someone that's lost everything? This is all I got that's on me right now. You know, what do you say? What do you say to them? The kids? It's just very devastating. Some of the things that weren't really addressed too much is the psychological effects from the trauma from these people that have lost everything. What do you, like, I'm still baffled by, you know, being able to provide the past experiences with the psychological issues that I had going on, because I just got back from a really awesome program in Tampa. So I was kind of prepared to deal with some of those psychological challenges and helping out with some of these people that had a desperate need of psychological, you know, therapy. And I was like, hey man, I'm not a specialist, but I think you might want to go talk to someone before it gets out of control. But other than that, I mean, I can add more and have a discussion later on if you have questions. Be more than happy to help. Like I said, it was unwavering support from even RHF donors that came in and said, hey, what do you guys need? To include Operation Healing Forces donors that came out and actually helped out, like big wig guys that you're like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, I'm here to help. So managing the network and synergizing the network is first and foremost important. And one of the things that we learn as SOF members is human networks. If you don't have those human networks, then your network is dead. And first and foremost, it's your network is your net worth. You can apply that to business and even in the military for the most part. And I'm transitioning, so I'm not transitioning, but transitioning out of the military. No pun intended, but I'll pass it off to one of you guys.
Sure, thanks. So like Eric, we kind of went about it a different way. We pulled in all the spouses. Also living in chaos, also being able to do many things at many times. We thought, okay, well, let's do this. So I just felt it in my heart that it was time. So I reached out to a couple of our past participants and I was like, so what do you think about driving to Western Carolina and just seeing what happens? So we decided to partner with a huge warehouse who was bringing out items out into the neediest, I would say, communities. Same thing. The support all over the country was amazing. My dining room was filled to the ceiling with boxes. We rented a U-Haul, we rented a minivan, we loaded in, we went, and we worked the whole day. Our next phase, again, with that similar idea of needing to serve and that purpose that we all feel that we have, is the children. We saw a lot of families and we saw a lot of kids. Some of them aren't back in school yet. So it pulled at my heartstrings. So we're doing a toy drive. We're going to caravan with toys for Western North Carolina, head out there and do a community day, have Santa come, parents can come, choose presents for their children and whatnot. So I know that the link is out for our wish list for our Amazon Drive. That's our next, I guess, phase. And then we have another phase in the works to pull the purpose and pull the drive of our service members to create or build small homes with the Appalachian Disaster Coalition. So keep an eye out for that next. But I would love to turn it to Erin and ask her to share what her experience was there.
So when Christy reached out to me, I mean, like literally the thing, like there's something that needs to happen, you jump in and help, right? I mean, she said, hey, do you want to go to Western North Carolina? I was like, yeah. And like, not when, how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? Like, yeah, let's go. She's like, well, we need to collect supplies. I own a small business. I said, okay, let's collect them here. Let's put the links out. And so we just started, I mean, like she said, the donations were coming in, you know, thousands upon thousands of dollars. We're buying generators, we're buying, and we just, I mean, 5 of us women, crazily, loaded these U-Hauls, vans, and we drove out there and we went to this warehouse and we got there and we pulled up and it's like, hey, here we are. And they're like, oh, okay, what did you guys bring? And we opened the U-Haul doors and they're like, you have generators, you have dehumidifiers, you have like, the stuff was leaving the warehouse as we were taking it off the truck. I mean, they had stuff to go. Everything that we had there left that day. While we were there, we had people walking in off the street saying like, again, this is the only things that I have. I have nothing else. I don't know where my family is. My spouse has left me. I mean, these things happening and we're like, okay, like, what do we do? Like, what would we do for one of our own? You know, like pack up this suitcase, you're on foot, like you're going to have all this stuff. You're going to have everything you need to get you as far as we can help you get in the next 15 minutes. And we just did that. Because it's just what you do. I mean, as a spouse, as a member of this community, when somebody needs something, it's always been you just jump in and do it. And you figure out the hows and the logistics later because you already know the why. It's like somebody needs me and this is what we're going to go and do. So to be a part of that, to walk in there and it's like to hear what people actually needed because everybody's seen the news and anybody that's not in North Carolina, you know, is saying like, oh, it's not that bad. You know, it's not that, you know, it's just a hurricane. You guys have hurricanes all the time. And, you know, to walk into a place and it's like, we need sleeping bags, but we need body bags. You know, we need all of the things. Like there's not, so to hear those and to see it in person and to look at all the vacation spots that you've seen and you've gone to and to see that none of it's there anymore. And these people are just, I mean, grassroots building it back on the backs of their neighbors and the rest of the community. And that's what I think being in the SOF community, really, I mean, that's what we've done our whole, you know, careers of our spouses and our whole adult lives. I mean, most of us have been doing whatever you're doing for your whole adult life. And so you just keep going and you keep serving.
So I love that you guys saw a calling and it's true military spouses and SOF spouses, you jumped right in without question and did it. Moving forward, if there are people who want to continue giving, I know we've got the QR code to give to Toys for Tots. How else can people get involved and participate and become a part of this?
I think it's important to know where you're going and what you're getting into. Because I know in the days immediately following, you know, it's like every lady from the church group wanted to go and bake and cook and help out. And I mean, people in the community coming back, they were going and doing rescuing. They're like, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's a war zone. And so it can't be just, we're going to go up there and help. And okay, where do we stay? And where do we get this? And where do we get that? So really knowing like what the limitations are of the people going is important. And making sure that you're not a burden in the community that you're going to help in, I think is a super important thing to consider. And check in to find a reputable organization that's doing what they say they're going to do and places that are, you know, pushing all that stuff out into the communities.
That's a really valid point because a lot of the things that we came in as far as the challenges were is we had a lot of people, but there were no shovels, there were no tools. And so when we showed up with the heavy equipment, it was like, and then just everything fell into place from there. Again, we left with a driven purpose and a plan and not just like willy-nilly, like most people would just, I'm gonna go up there and help and then they become a burden. That's not the way to do it. If you can't, then, you know, donate to like RHF or some of these other donations, Operation Link Forces or the Honor Foundation will find a way to get the resources needed to there because I'll do it again. I don't care. I'll run my company to the ground. Doesn't matter to me, just to make sure these people have help. Just to see the look on their faces when you show up with heavy equipment to give them a road so they have a driveway so they can actually get to go get supplies is just priceless. And cutting down trees or whatever it is that they need for that matter. So.
Medical care.
The question is, what do they have for medical care?
They have a decent supply that's coming in, but we had medics on our team through the Special Forces Association. So they said a lot of the pararescue gents from the Air Force that were going out there, they're going out in helicopters. We were delivering goods via the helicopters. They had a lot of the med teams, search and rescue. A lot of them were volunteers out of Fort Bragg and surrounding areas. Whatever medical supplies is beneficial, I wouldn't say no, but they do have some medical supplies that are getting out there. And then also the other thing too is the biggest issue is the people that have special medical needs to get them, like, insulin and stuff like that. I know they were doing a lot of insulin runs to certain people, and we got calls in coming from everywhere to go check on loved ones in certain areas, but it was hard to get out there unless you were an aviation asset. And they're even dropping assets with drones as well, or supplies and resources.
From our contacts on the ground, the next need for medical is going to be therapy. Any volunteer therapist is what we've been asked about. So
Yes.
we're going to partner with the Appalachian Coalition Disaster Coalition next. And speaking with Bradley, he was very passionate about that need. Yes, Narcan B stuff. I mean, yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Monica, I'd like to just point something out that as each of you were speaking about your response to a disaster, it's like nobody knows how to respond. Everybody's sitting there. Everybody wants to help, but they don't know how to help. And the fact that both of you are still actively in it, you still have a husband that's supporting the mission, and that is a feat in its own. And then Eric, that you are still active duty, and Aaron, the amount of experience that you have in dealing with, this is your life, this is your lifestyle, and you guys are showing up. And I think that's noteworthy. It's something I'm listening to all you speak, and the toll that you've already taken, to support your significant other or do it yourself, and you're showing up. I think what it points to is, an investment in you guys. So I think any organization that's willing to do that, invest in SOF. It doesn't just stop, like once the mission stops, active duty mission stops, that you see the impact after the fact. So I think it just points to it even more to keep on investing in the families and in those individuals, because they are the first people to show up when nobody else is showing up. And they're chomping at the bit to get out there, and they know how to work. Like this is a calm space for them when things are exploding and they're on fire. You seem to be in flow state. So I think it's really cool to hear all three of you say that, and you've done enough already, and you keep on showing up. So thank you.
As this is a global SOF symposium, I would say that I think that it is imperative that we synergize the networks, the charities, so that it is more effective, more efficient, and driven with a purpose and a plan, so that the next time this does happen, of course, there's continued support that needs to be done in Western North Carolina. It's not just because it's like 2 months ago. They still need a lot of help. But I will say, like, the build the capacity and the capability to be able to respond faster and more efficiently.
Question over here.
Is there, you guys charge to the sound of the guns to help, as you kind of just articulated. What's a more organized way, or something we could do as we head into retirement to join? Like, I've heard of Rubicon, I've heard of Samaritan's Purse, I think it's called. Is there anything kind of, that you can join and be on a beeper in a different way, volunteering your time?
Yes, yes, there is. We could put a list out of people that we know and trust that are doing the work that needs to be done. And then you could kind of choose which one, speaks to you. The other thing that I would like to mention about Western Carolina is they have a fear of being forgotten. And I think we can all relate to that, right? So that is one thing that they voiced that kind of stuck with me, that I would like for people to think about. Like, we know what that feels like sometimes. We know what goes on behind the scenes. They're worried that they're going to be forgotten. So if there's the people who really want to, 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road, there are going to be organizations out there to lean on.
I would just add too, if you're, the Special Forces Association has a pretty robust network. It was, like I was saying before, it's really interesting to see the different organizations coalesce together, Operation Healing Forces, Rick and Mara Foundation, the Special Forces Association, a couple other associations. And we just clicked as a cross-functional disaster relief team, so to speak. It was just amazing. But like she was saying, we could put together a list that are the trustworthy ones that we will recommend, I guess.
And something we heard repetitively when we were out there is as much as Asheville took a hit, there's a lot of other places in Asheville. And that's, I mean, that's that's the name that everybody knows. That's where, but there's so many other communities. And so kind of looking into different places for organizations in the smaller communities and further into the mountains and stuff too. There's a lot of places out there.
On a side note, I think we were talking yesterday where it was like, okay, we're not welcoming anybody into our community. Yeah, Harley, you talked that.
Yeah. If you've spent any time in Western, you know that they're very friendly people. They're so kind and so generous, but they're tired. And when we were there, we were like, okay, the coffee shop's open. We're gonna go have coffee. And they were like, oh, don't ask any questions. Like, are you here to like support, or are you here to just like make a story, right? So I think being really sensitive to, if you do go, to know that they're tired, and they want you to come, and they want the support, and they want the business, but they also want it in a kind way, and they're kind of protecting their own, building within their own little communities. But it's a very valid point to say it's not just the big cities. It's the Burnsville, right, that we're bringing the toys to. That is, just a tiny little town, but really needs a lot right now.
They're already controlling the damage control, so to speak. Did you see the damage? They're changing the narrative. Did you see the progress? Did you see the progress instead of the damage? So they're staying on the positive. It's amazing how resilient these people are in some ways, and I'm lost for words and some of the stuff. Like someone had mentioned, like a war zone. The only difference between a war zone and this is that in 2 hours and a half I'll be home, versus you leave over there, you come home and you're like, okay, I don't have to go see that for a while. Versus, okay, it's just in my backyard. That's what makes it worse. So I'm open for questions. This is like a discussion. So any questions?
All right. Well, we'll keep you guys around. I think you guys are staying around. So if you got more questions, we can hit at the end, or then once we go offline. But really appreciate you guys opening up. I got to hear the Christy and Eric's story a little bit last night. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a fascinating discussion. But Aaron, you made a quote that I'm keeping, and this is why I love our spouses, because you said it. It's just what we do. We got everybody together and we loaded up a U-Haul and a minivan, and it's just what we do. And that's not normal. Like, that's our normal. God bless all you spouses, but that's not normal. So thanks for all y'all for doing what you do. Real quick, so if you were inspired by these efforts, move to want to participate. There's lots of opportunities. So the Great Toy Convoy for Western North Carolina, they're going to continue to look for toys as we get into winter and Christmas for those kids out there. And then also, so this is due to the Appalachian Disaster Coalition, Operation Help, the Station Foundations, and several others. So there's plenty of ways to give. If we didn't get any toys tonight, I know that scrolling in the back is the QR code that goes to the Amazon list to help the Station Foundation gather those up. And then we also want to send out a thanks to the Inspire Up Foundation. They gave a $500 grant to support those families that were impacted by Helene. Sometimes that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I guarantee you it will make a huge difference for somebody sitting out in Western North Carolina that lost everything.
And I believe somebody mentioned that on December 14th, you guys are going to have a community event where the toys will be delivered and the parents will get to come out and pick, and Santa will be there. So somewhat of a celebration and bringing the holidays to this area that has been hit so hard. So I can't wait to see those pictures and how that impacts them and hear those stories. So we hope that you guys will share those with us and appreciate all that you're doing. Your story is incredibly inspiring and very impactful, just as our next two guests. as we move into the beyond exposures. No one goes to war certain that they won't come out unscathed. No community understands that better than the SOF community. Making the most of your health in and after service is key. Today, we have two of our very own with us who have lived the crazy special operations life and gone on to keep serving. Dr. Dice may be a doctor, but he is a Navy SEAL first. And Madeline Vane both work with individuals struggling with alcohol and substance use. They have their own practices and work as champion sponsors at the Farley Center with every member of the family. I'm going to let you guys come on up here and share your stories and let us know how we can participate and support you.
Thank you so much.
So I'm Maddie Van. I'm also a spouse. Actually, my husband is a retired SWIC. And unfortunately, a lot of the stories today, we're bringing up some memories for us of the Hurricane Katrina recovery. So he did some similar stuff back at that time. And I know whenever I get up and I talk about addiction, trauma, and grief, it feels a little bit like a downer. So I apologize for that because there's been some good work in the room today. But I also think that one of the reasons it's difficult for our SOF community members to seek help when they need it at a place like the Farley Center or with individuals like us is because of that let's go get it done mentality, right? We're always there for the people who need us. We're always there for the person to the right and to the left. And then when it's time for us to look at our drinking or the trauma or the grief or the TBI, it's really easy to put it on the back burner and just say, I'll get to it at some point. But our understanding, especially as people transition out of the military, we work with active duty too, but I work a lot with veterans. As people transition out, that's when a lot of the problems start to arise. And we look at addiction as a chronic relapsing condition. And so at some point, we have to step in and help people out. Some of the questions that were raised in the conversation around this were, why is it so difficult? I think I touched on one reason why it's difficult to ask for help is because we're always the helpers to some degree, right? But then there's some other practical logistical questions that I get asked, like, what about my clearance, for example? I would always encourage everyone to talk to people who know about security clearance processes, which is us at the Farley, we definitely do. Seeking treatment and completing it successfully will only help you in your clearance process. It's when you put it to the side and you don't get to it and those problems start to arise and the trickle down negative effects happen that we are a threat to our clearance, right? The other question, of course, speaking with my husband, he raised this one, is like, folks will look at you different, perhaps, if you seek treatment, right? Even if they know that you need it and that things have changed significantly in the last 20 years, the way that we look at alcohol addiction or any kind of addiction in the SOF community used to be completely pushed under the rug. And now at least we can talk about it, but perhaps there's still a little bit of stigma attached to it. I still would argue that it is better to be healthy and well, take care of yourself and your mental health, and seek some help. Was that everything?
Thank you, Madeline. My name is Dr. Dice, and it is an honor to be here to serve our warfighters. I'm going to give a quick shout out to the Farley Center, for help putting on this event. And on a personal note, the Farley Center saved my life. 14 years ago, I was hitting a low in my life, and I ended up in the Farley Center, and my life was forever altered. I'm going to talk about PTSD and TBI, but I want to share with you why I'm so passionate about this connection to our warfighters. I've always been had that hero gene. I wanted to be there to save the day ever since I was a little kid, oldest of 8 brothers and sisters. I was a firefighter. I was a paramedic. I was a Navy SEAL. I just wanted to save the day. And that went on. And every one of those groups, we fought hard and we played even harder. There were all that camaraderie. I love the brotherhood and the sisterhood of just getting in there, getting a job done right, doing it the best we can, and then just partying. We would hang hard together, and it's that culture. When I got in the military, it was like, whoa, we drink to indoctrinate, we drink to celebrate, we drink to separate, we drink. It's drink. It was how we expressed emotion and feelings. Someone's having a hard time, someone's having a good time. It was such a part of the culture, and I openly embraced that. It was the solution. It was the Band-Aid. It was everything to us. When I got out, I had a lot of difficulty decompressing, coming back into the society. I got caught in that cycle of I'm uncomfortable over here because I'm all keyed up and I feel crazy over here. I'm going to go back over there where I feel normal. Everything makes sense over there. It's black and white, live and die. It's simple. Over here is all these shades of gray and emotion and bills. And, I didn't like it over here. And so I needed substances to survive in the United States. That quickly spiraled, and I ended up, not just alcohol, but a lot of other chemicals, cocaine, ended up on crystal meth, and I weighed 130 pounds. You know, it was a low point, and I didn't know where to turn. I ended up at the Farley Center, and a therapist there somehow got through to me. And I mean, I had the latitude and longitude of that building at the Farley Center tattooed on my leg because for my life changed course. And I went back to school after I went to the Farley Center and got my undergraduate, my master's in counseling, and went back and got my PhD in counseling. And I was determined I am not going to let another warfighter go down the same road again. And working with the Farley Center and Bishop and Dice Defense, I'm determined to connect the dots. And I began in the last decade working with veterans, discovering these links. And it's funny, as I discover them, I go, that's what happened to me. It's like this realization of uncovering my life path with these other veterans I'm sharing it with. And gosh, I'll start with the TBIs. I mean, we're the information we're gathering, the awareness of TBI is growing and growing. And not just, it doesn't take as much as we thought to cause a TBI, but the major causes for TBIs are auto accidents, falls, assaults, and so and so. And to a warfighter, that could be just a good weekend. Though when we go out and we party, and I'm not just talking on the battlefield, when we come back, we go hard. And so many times I've woken up with like, I don't know what happened, but my head freaking hurts. And guess what? The symptoms for TBI, anxiety, could be depression, loss of balance, mood swings, are all mirror a hangover. So what's my solution? I've learned so well in the military, have another drink. Well, the primary injury and secondary injury on a TBI exists a space between that, which could be hours, could be days, could be weeks, but where your brain is super susceptible to re-injury. And what do I do as a warfighter? I intoxicate myself, further increasing my risk of hitting my head again. So that potential for multiple TBIs in our service members when they're just having fun on a weekend, we're in this double, triple, quadruple increased risk category for injuring ourselves when we're not even over there. So this awareness coming out, these injuries we're doing this, and I didn't know that as a service member. And so for TBIs, I've kind of been really bringing to light this awareness that, hey, just because you don't have a bump on your head, but you hit your head, well, guess what? Some of the worst injuries don't have swelling on the outside, they have swelling on the inside. Let's take some time and take care of this system. And there's been a culture shift for us. There's been seriously, especially in the spec war community out there, special warfare, there's this understanding that the body is a tool that needs to be respected. And we're seeing a lot of our service members choose to live in maybe not just an alcohol-free lifestyle, but a more healthy, respectful of this body lifestyle. And so this culture, this awareness that just keep this warfighting machine very fine-tuned for a purpose gives people the opportunity to slow down. It gives a path back once they go through treatment to, hey, it used to be impossible to serve in the military and not drink, but now it's becoming more acceptable. So at the Farley Center, we're working to get that knowledge out there so that people become aware that there is a path, when you're in trouble in the service, back to the front lines again. And that's what the big fear of seeking help is, that I can't go out and play in the sandbox anymore. The same rules apply for PTSD. Oh, gosh, the realization with PTSD, the symptomology of it, it very much falls in line with the frog in the boiling water scenario. It creeps up on you. It resurfaces over time. And our solution all along is to drink. Don't tell anybody. I don't need any help. I should be able to fix this myself. that's where we end up in these situations where we feel alone, that no one's like me. And we're seeing these increased rates of suicide, these higher sustained rates of suicide in our service members. And at the Farley Center, a lot of our work we do is this awareness piece of those dark moments of our fellow service members. And once you get back in, back in the field, once you pass through this early recovery segment and you get out in the field, you need to become someone who can talk about this road back. Because what I have learned in treating veterans is that I am almost averse to seeking help. I'm so used to being the person who helps everyone else. I'm so used to being that hero that I don't know how to ask for help, but the person I will listen to is my buddy I trust. If someone has been down that road before, I will listen to them. If someone I know has been in recovery and I see them get help and come back again, I will ask them how they did it. So a lot of that buddy aid is really coming into play for us to get the message out to our service members that they need to be, once they find themselves achieving a healthier lifestyle, to be a beacon, be someone they can reach out to. Because I remember on my downward road, I was not listening to anyone. There was a number of people trying to point out the problems. There were a number of agencies that were available to me, but I was not going anywhere near them. It really does take the ones closest to you that you'll be able to reach out to. And if we're keeping all these secrets from each other and we're not talking about it, we're really, gosh, it's funny. I hate to put the burden on our buddies, but in the service, if you have had the opportunity experience to go through recovery and go back out again, there is something to be said for reaching out and helping each other get through this. So, a huge shout out to the Farley Center. Like I said, it saved my life. But the PTSD and the TBI we're seeing in our service members now, the awareness of what the symptoms are and how they coincide with substance abuse. Alcohol's been a remedy for everything. It really and truly has. And the idea of living a life without it is almost inconceivable. Yeah. So we can field any questions you have about this. This is very important to us, but it's a discussion we'd like to take to you right now.
Well, I know I've got a question.
Sure.
And then maybe hopefully somebody else will jump up after me. I know as a military spouse, a lot of times we see things and we wonder and don't always know how to approach it. And what services do you have for family members, for friends, for the spouses who want to jump in and do something and partake in it and start heading those things off?
Want to talk about the family program?
Sure, yeah. So at the Farley Center, we believe very strongly that full recovery requires also your family participation, 100%, right? And if you're going back to a situation where your loved ones don't understand addiction or PTSD, if that's what you've been working on with us, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to stay in that healthy space. So we offer weekly noon to 1 p.m. Friday Zoom educations that it's open to the public. So literally anybody could drop into that. It's not obviously specific to any client per se, because it's a public forum. We offer weekend retreat opportunities. Essentially, people will stay in Williamsburg and come and have some time with their loved one or whoever is in treatment with us in a facilitated setting with our family therapists. And I have some really good conversations about what happened during the addiction. What are we going to do differently? How can we support each other? What are the rules going to be going forwards? Because so much has to change, and it's a big deal for everyone. And of course, we also have kind of a high touch approach where we're going to have family contact every week. And that could include just a phone call with the spouse, could include couples therapy off and on, and that would be virtual or in person. It could include family therapy if the kids are old enough. So if they're under 14, for the most part, we're not going to be a part of the conversation with them. But we do provide a lot of guidance. We have educations all week long pretty much. And some part of that too is how to talk to your family members. If you are a spouse who's concerned about a loved one and they haven't necessarily sought treatment, you still can reach out to us. learn about the Farley Center, learn about other types of programming. We provide a lot of additional resources and support and recommendations. Because I tell our clients all the time, you are in treatment 24/7 with us, but your family members are still holding down the fort and doing all the things. And this is especially true probably for soft spouses, taking care of everything. And again, not really taking care of themselves. So we encourage family members to get therapy, go to Al-Anon, go to Nar-Anon, seek out all that support.
And let me put a message directly out to the spouses and family members out there. If you're having a relationship with a service member who's in treatment, I'm going to ask this one greatest gift you could give them is be patient in their recovery. You're going to see in the early part of their treatment, they're going to come out and they're trying to, they're going to be maybe charged full of hope. They get their, I stopped drinking. I'm going to live a new life. Here I go. And they're talking to a therapist, or they may have a sponsor and they're working with them. And you may be ready to receive this new version of them. But you've had this sense of being disconnected with them for so long because they've been turning to alcohol and becoming withdrawn and distance. And now that they've stopped drinking, they're not coming to talk to you and engage. They're talking to a therapist, or talking to their sponsor, or they're going to recovery meetings. And they're spending all this time not with you. So there may be this feeling of, wait, this is the same experience I've had before. In fact, this is worse. I'm still feeling ignored and lonely. Know this, the war fighter who is taking this huge leap in their life to try something new, try to learn how to enjoy and be part of the world and connect with the world around them, has very poor connection and people skills. They have to relearn how to engage and have relationships with others. And they are practicing with their therapist. They're practicing with their sponsor. They're practicing in this group work so that they don't practice on you. Because if they practice on you, they are going to screw it up. And you're going to go 0 to 60, and there's going to be this huge blow up, and you're going to be fighting just like before. And what does an alcoholic or an addict do when they get in a huge argument and they've done nothing wrong? They don't understand why they're being yelled at. They're being pushed out the door to drink. I'm not giving them an excuse, but that's their natural go-to. So here you are, the supportive family member who's so happy that they're home, and inadvertently, you've just added the huge stressor to them that they're now like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble. I might as well drink and have a reason to get in trouble for. So I'm not asking you to, I'm asking you to be patient. Be patient. Let them work their program, give them space, give them the additional time. The road to healing, you don't go to treatment, you're 28 days and you're cured and you're done. That's the tip of the iceberg. It's going to take a year of early recovery for like whole holiday season of it being awkward and different and not the same before you begin creating new memories you can reflect on that haven't been ruined by drinking and drug use. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Families is cost. Like, are you covered under TRICARE, or are you a 501c3? I'm just asking because I feel like that is a big issue for a lot of families in seeking help.
Yeah, we're in network with TRICARE. We take VACCN for the veterans who are going through the VA system. And we do work a lot with the foundations, the benevolent aid societies too, who will cover some part of that treatment. So it should never be a barrier. We certainly are open to the conversation of how to get it done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And in the veteran community, there's it's funny there. We like to feel special. You have the Delta meetings, you have the team guy meetings, you have these very unique groups. So, if a veteran comes from a certain community, even if it's the birds of a feather, like an aviator community, we can connect the dots to plug you in to these. There are communities that exist in recovery that aren't affiliated with, any agency that requires payment. You're plugging them into a community, and that community aid begins to encircle them and helps them begin that journey. So even if someone has absolutely nothing, that community aid exists out there. It's just us connecting the dots for them.
Quick one.
Yes, sir.
Going to ask you to just comment on this. Recently, thanks for sharing, by the way. Heard this recently where a psych said, my assumption is that if you were an operator in SOF in the global war on terror for 5 to 10 years, my coming in position is that you have PTSD. And the logic of this individual was you guys had to go for 6 to 8 months at a time. You see things, you come home, you process, you stuff it away, you go back, you come home, you go back, you come home. And that was relatively unique in kind of warfighter history to a degree. I mean, and I know you've got warrant officers and NCOs that have done 12 to 15 of these rotations. So with everything you see, just like you to comment on that individual's theory that they're going to start with, we think you probably have some form of PTSD.
Yeah. I'll jump on that grenade. The first thing I'm going to say, if I'm a warfighter and you're going to tell me that I'm broken in any way, I'm putting up a barrier, a defense. There's nothing wrong with me. I've been programmed this way. I can handle myself. There's tons of other warriors out there who are having problems. I'm going to choose to be one of those people who don't have a problem, whether I have problems or not, just so I can keep playing. But being on this side of it and understanding different concepts like moral injury, we were not always, as warfighters, going to be in that mode. The warfighter who's in the kill mode, who's out there doing the job that needs to be done, if they may not have any PTSD. They're programming a sound for getting the job done. The problem that begins to exist is after they step out of that role and their moral compass in here begins to shift over time. And my experience with that, my own experience is when I was over there playing the sandbox, we got the job done. We got asked to do things. I had a lot of interactions with the local children there. Sometimes we get very aggressive, and I'm not proud of this, but they were pulling gear off our rigs, and we need to get stuff done. So I just put a cloud of mace out, and the kids scattered, and I was like, "Roger that, got the job done." Fast forward a decade later, I have a small child of my own who's crawling up in my lap, and for some reason, I'm getting anxiety, and I'm kind of, I don't want to have to have a couple beers just so I can be around my son. I don't know what's going on. Subconsciously, I'm a guy who maces kids, and I'm having nightmares at the time about those children. And I couldn't understand that, that moral injury can creep up you over time. So many of these warfighters out there are perfectly fine doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not in a position to feel any sort of trauma and injury because they're in that mode. Once they try to step out of it is when that moral injury could catch up with them. And that could be years, decades later, as they further develop as a human being into different areas of their lives, that's when they need to be on the lookout. Like, I was not aware of why I'm feeling this way. But if someone had explained to me that could happen, there might have been a chance for me to reach out much sooner and so I had to expose my family to that trauma. I hope that kind of answered your question.
I have some thoughts too on that.
Sure.
Couple things we don't do well, of course, is help people decompress when they come back from being overseas. So there's that. But that assumption about veterans, particularly in combat veterans, is harmful and it's inaccurate. It's about 30% of combat veterans who have PTSD, which compared to rape victims, they have an 80% chance of PTSD. People who go to combat are a lot better prepared, but we do have a stigma that it exists around veterans. And I think with a lot of our providers, those are the kind of things that we run into. Now we have a broader conversation in the SOF community too about the allostatic load and all these other assumptions about the harm that may have been caused by a whole career of this. But I would argue as the trauma program manager at the Farley Center that we have to have more of an individualized approach. I have plenty of combat veterans in active duty who have no PTSD, or if they do, it's from childhood or something else that happened. And so if our first conversation out of the gate is like, what happened on deployment? That's not going to go anywhere. And it's kind of like you said, people just shut down. They don't trust you.
Yeah, and that's very true. And having a childhood trauma is far more likely in the United States, the statistics are showing, than having a trauma overseas. And like you just mentioned, having a childhood trauma, you have very poor coping skills to handle it. So you handle it improperly. And guess what happens when you have a trauma on the battlefield? you're going to use those same poor coping skills to try to process that trauma. So, yeah, there's a lot of unpacking once it gets to a point where you're entering into the Farley Center, but that awareness that, wow, you know, I've been processing things the same repeated way over and over in my life, and it's finally catching up with me.
Sometimes feel like I should collect all the stupid things that providers have said to veterans.
Big notebook.
I know we are barely scratching the surface on this topic, but I want to thank you all very much for your honest conversations about it. Thank you for your questions and participating. Thank you very much for the purpose that you guys are fulfilling and helping our community with this all. So thank you very much, Dr. Dyke.
Heartbeat of service. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground tonight, but sometimes the biggest need that we don't think about is that community. And you could hear about it in that last discussion, and then you heard about it in the first discussion as well. But that's what we're going to talk about in this section, which is called Rally Point. And it's really to make you slow down and think about your family and your friends. And it's not something we tend to go, hey, my left and right, I got it. But it becomes not true. You're really thinking about it. You're not really identifying that. But the real question is, who's in your circle? Who were those voices Doc was talking about that was telling him the hard truth? Not the, hey man, you okay? Good? Okay. And walking away, but going, hey man, I'm sitting you down and I'm going to risk our friendship and our brotherhood to tell you something's wrong. Who were those people? And so tonight we've got two of our SOF brothers here, and they're going to really passionate about strengthening bonds and have created an amazing opportunity here in the Fort Liberty area. Eric spent his career as a JSOC operator and Air Force combat controller, and now serves as executive director of the Rick Harima Foundation. And John is a retired CW5 with, get this, 37 years of service. 37. That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And John's the deputy executive director of the Rick Harima Foundation. So, gentlemen, please come up here and tell us all about your important work.
Thank you, Michael and Monica. Thank you. Kaylee, this is so cool. I love the team room conversation. I love that venue because it does open the door to just have some candid conversations, and maybe some of it gets a little bit sporty sometimes, and I think that's necessary to have those conversations. And I whispered this to Kaylee. I had these conversations. It's because Kaylee has really been pushing these conversations for like 10 years. Well, but getting close to 10 years now. That really there is a culture shift. I think that she's a huge catalyst for that. The things that you're pushing are facilitating conversations like this. And then I think that's saving a ton of lives that you'll never see. I don't think you're ever going to know that, but you absolutely have to recognize that. So yes, thank you for letting us wrap up this portion of the team room conversation. And I call this my continuation of service. So I get to go after 20 years of serving in the military. It doesn't stop. So if you're not out yet, and I'm just telling you that service does not end. And I share the sentiment that Dr. Dice, you brought up, is that if I make it out of it, if I make it out of the darkness, or if I make it through the healing process, I owe it to my brothers to go back into the trenches and lead them out. I have a direction. I know where there's help, and I know where there's abundance waiting for them because they deserve it. And I really believe that we've said it probably 50 times in these conversations. It's about connection. And really that's what RHF does. The Rick Harima Foundation empowers and connects the military family and helps create fond memories for them. And those are the only people that are going to be there at the end of the day. The team room goes away. Sorry, it does. The families are the ones that are there for you. They deserve it. And the families have had to carry the mail too. So we empower that. We empower and we remove every single barrier that's necessary for them to have a great time and for them to form those memorable experiences. And if we can do that, if we can remove all those barriers, then we know that at least we're moving against something that we know is going to work for the longevity. You're still going to need medicine potentially. You're still going to need some sort of clinical intervention. But what we do is really, really fun programs and events to empower and connect the military family. But then what's really happening in the background, and we hide the medicine in what we do, is it's a non-clinical solution that helps to address some of the stresses related to high operational tempo and high training and, packing away the trauma. And it ends up resulting in a disconnection from the family, a disconnection, and it forces isolation. So we're hiding our medicine and what we do. It's really fun. It's exciting. The kids get sweaty. We serve meals at every single program and event that we host. And at the same time, we are removing every single barrier for them to be outside, connect with their family. And we know that that's the number one priority for the operator. We know it. That's why they do what they do. They just lose sight of that sometimes because they're hyper-focused on the mission. They need to be. And the spouses show up exactly like the warrior spouse does and support the warfighter by making sure that everything is ironed, is tightened up. So there is no concern. So we know that that's what they want. That's what I wanted when I was serving. So it really is the no-brainer to figure out there's plenty of ways that we can help. But helping the family as a unit ends up being something that it ends up paying dividends tenfold. John?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Eric. And yeah, so it's an honor to be here this evening to talk in this this forum here. And I want to kind of back up a little bit and tell a little bit about who Rick Herma is. Right, the Rick Herma Foundation is named after a guy that was killed in combat, Special Forces soldier from Michigan. And he was killed in Iraq in 2006. And one of the stories that I've often heard about Rick is how, especially while he was in training, he would go around and borrow his buddy's cell phone for his Saturday afternoon calls, where he would every Sunday afternoon, he would call his family and call his friends back home on a borrowed cell phone because he was in training or something. And that's the type of service that, just needs to be honored. And we were honored just this last week. We had 25 people from the Herma family from Michigan at Rick's place here in town doing projects for us and helping us get the site ready for our Harvest Festival. And Eric talks about, letting the kids come out and be hot and sweaty. I'll tell you, those kids we could not get them off the trebuchet that was launching pumpkins. We could not keep them off of the mallets that was smashing pumpkins. And Eric, I don't know if Eric heard this yet, but we had a mutton busting contest, and this family that brings these sheep for this, this just goes to show how military kids are just a little bit different. The family that brings the sheep for this, they travel the rodeo circuit, right? And they offer this for the kids that come to the rodeos. And they came to us after the event and they said, we have never had that many kids that wanted to mutton bust. And we have never had that many parents so involved. All right. So it's just great. And our thing is we're there to connect the families to each other, but we're also there to connect families to other families. Because as you know, being a military family, you go to a community and you don't have a community until you make it a community, until you connect with your community. And so that's really what we do.
The foundation, the Rick Herma Foundation, we're coming up on 10 years, celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And 10 years ago, my teammate, we were on our way out on a deployment. It was like one of the craziest deployments that you could go on. It's like a VI deployment. So it's like, you're doing a lot. You're taking the fight to the enemy, and you are getting it. You're going after the worst people. We were on our way to this Afghanistan rotation, and my teammate was purchasing 50 acres of land in Fayetteville, North Carolina, so 5 miles outside of the base. He refinanced his home to purchase this land with the intentions of honoring the sacrifice of his best friend. So you know, really at the end of the day, what's happening is to honor a legacy, and that's very important to our community, and everybody knows that in this room. And we honor their legacy by remembering them and remembering them in some sort of meaningful way. So we're really, really good at, you know, showing up for the families, because we know that Rick would have been out there at the property every single day when it first was formed, with a machete and a chainsaw to clear land. That's where programs first started. It was investment into the property. It's the community. It's the volunteers coming out and building Rick's Place. It's not ours. It's the community's facilities. So it started off with a bunch of pine trees, and now it's turned into a recreational center that John just finished a huge project. He just built our second playground at Rick's Place for children 2 to 6 years old. And that's a really big deal to be able to provide something like that. And that's our passive offering that we bring to the community. But 10 years ago, today, or in December, 10 years ago, this foundation aimed to do something. And the mission is to serve the military families. And we've been successful at it. So we define success as 10,000 families, 10,000 attendees per year. So 10,000 attendees are coming through our programs and events. And we host anywhere from 90 to 100, 110 programs and events all throughout the year. So programming is consistent. And every single time a family or an attendee comes on our facilities, it is just for the military and the families. And when they come, they don't pay a dime for what we provide to them. The park stays open from sun up to sundown. So we have passive features also. So we are a community resource that does not go anywhere. It's consistent. And it's a container. I call it a safe container that the families know when they come there, there's nobody in uniform there. They don't have to worry about, you know, it being a work function. They can go and fully relax. And that's a very important piece of what we offer to the community. We also offer our facilities to the active duty units. So active duty units can reserve our space, so FRGs and chaplains host events there. We had Christie and Station Foundation came out there to host an event. So we make the facilities available to the community as well. And we prioritize the active duty units, especially the ones that are getting tasked for short notice deployments, which that's the first time that I met Christie. And it was my final interview to take on the role of the executive director. And it was incredibly powerful to see that firsthand. I was always on the other side, and to see the spouses put a brave face on, and they got their little ones running around, but you can see that they are stressed out, but they're holding it together. And we help them. We meet them in the space that they're at. They know they have an ally in that fight. But it was the first time I saw it. And I remember my wife was with me, and she's, you know, we're looking at it. I was like, wow, this is emotional. Like, this is really, really difficult to watch this. And my wife looks at me, she's like, yeah, you idiot. I know. I did it for 10 tours. I get it. So, that was a like learning moment for me. But I think it's important to also recognize that, yeah, SOF has some unique stresses, and they ask a lot of SOF. And we raised our hand to do that. Our families did not raise their hand. So we are going to the families as a unit to do something about that. But we also recognize that other military units have, you know, unique stresses too. So I'm excited to start having conversations. I just flew out from Texas. I was at Fort Cavazos meeting with the 3rd Corps commander, and being able to bless some families out there too. That's important that we execute our vision of expansion and we serve other families. There are other families out there, and I don't think things are going to slow down anytime soon. I still am tied into the community enough to know that we ain't done yet. Something's brewing. So what can we do actively? What can we do beforehand, a preventative solution to empower the families and get them strengthened for something that we're going to ask them to do. We need them to do. So we're going to continue to expand. John and I have been working our butts off to make that happen. And people are asking for it too. They're asking for that sort of help. Any questions about has anybody been out to our foundation, the Rick's Place in Fayetteville? Got some hands? Yeah, if you haven't, we'll be out there tomorrow. we'll share, rhfnow.org has all of our information, and please come and visit the park. It's pretty powerful. When you step on those grounds, what happens there.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll just say that we do, our goal is to meet the families where they are, and we're only 5.5 miles from the base. So it doesn't matter on how short of a leash you are on, or just right there. And we can be, whether you need a structured program that's going to make you have fun, because that's our goal, is to make you have fun. And, or if you just need a place for a retreat, the unstructured, the gate's always open during the day. And we love to see families out there getting after it, playing, kids getting hot and sweaty and hungry. And I will tell you about the new playground. We did recognize that we have that wonderful tree house. If you've been out there, you know what I'm talking about. That wonderful tree house, our signature feature. It is great, but if you got a toddler, you're worried about their safety, right? It's
a 3-story tree house. It looks like Ewok Village. It's the coolest thing.
So we built this playground because we felt that those ages were being underserved. And but I will tell you this. I did a little research on playgrounds. I did not realize the popularity in the spinners, the things that spin. Right back in my day, it was a merry-go-round. They don't have those anymore, I guess not, but they got other things. So I will tell you, according to the playground gentleman that sold us our playground, and they do business nationwide, we have the only Comet spinner that is without limiter. He has never sold one without a limiter before. I don't know why they even offer it if they've never sold one, but maybe they only offered it for us, right? And so we do have it, and you should see the kids on that. I mean, we've only had the playground open since Saturday, and the kids just are going crazy on that thing. It's amazing. To be honest, and here's just a thing, is on Saturday after our event, we were cleaning up. And so the event was over. We were cleaning up. I saw more kids on that one spinner that could play on the other little backyard style playground we had before. So, I mean, money made instantly, right? And so that was wonderful. But yeah, I want to open it to any questions.
I think I heard a question earlier today. I think it was you. What was your name, sir? Yeah, Ed. Ed brought it up. Where can people go to if they want to help out, if they want to have that purposeful impact in the community after service? And really, what the foundation is built is the ability to attract people like you, the willingness to just solve problems. That's how Eric got connected with the foundation. He just recognized the power of the foundation, and he continues to solve multiple problems. Like he calls me and says, Eric, I got a solution for this. So I think connecting with organizations that have some presence in the community, they don't have to be in that domain or competence in addressing every single thing, but we have access to a network of generous donors that support our mission, which provides us the opportunity to serve other types of missions and show up for the community or show up for a person in need in a way that it doesn't directly come from us, but we can facilitate, funds available to go help out in another way. So I would encourage you just to stay connected with organizations that just have built a trust in the community.
One thing I think people should know that you guys do is you provide these opportunities routinely and openly. You meet spontaneous needs, but you have your own calendar that is reliable, predictable. So you don't even have to look it up to say, when is this happening? It's just a fixed feature for the community that is open. They know exactly when it's going to happen. And that is key for military families, especially special operations families that have no predictability in their day-to-day. So you take a task off their plate when you provide routine benefits for them, a place that they can go without thinking when they're stressed and the house is melting down. It's phenomenal that you bring 10,000 people to your one site a year. And you also enable meaningful connection around the dinner table unconventionally away from your grounds, which is pretty incredible. Anybody that's followed our family collaboratives research and efforts know that there's 8 soft pitfalls and healthy checkpoints. And one of those is an active avoidance of family dinner, because there's more to connecting over meals, just like your partner forced downrange. Same holds true at home. And so I think that is some of the magic in your organization that maybe gets missed, because it is that unusual. It's incredible.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, and I'll just throw out one of our most popular programs is called Messy Mondays. Anybody want to have a guess on what day of the week it is? Yeah, it's Monday, right? It's Monday afternoon. So, and it's an art program where, it's not where you're dropping off your kids and doing art and they do art while you go. It's where you and your kids do art together. Right. And the various mediums change from week to week, but it's together. And oh, by the way, you take your project home and you guys relish in the greatness that you just created, and we clean up the mess. Right. So it's a win-win for the families for sure.
There was a question back there.
Hey, Sean, I'm about 90 days out from retiring. I'm staying in Hawaii, which is awesome. But my question is, if you settle down in, one of the hubs, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Coronado, California, Little Creek, or Tampa, like a predominance of these things are here. And I don't know if it might actually be a question for Doc Dice and crew, but so I know like OHF, Healing Forces, like they've got funding that flies people and moves people, but a lot of my peers and folks that I don't get to be with anymore because they made a permanent decision to a temporary problem. When they did hang it up, they're like, I'm buying my place out in North Dakota. I'm getting, a place that in the real estate brochure might have involved the word compound, Fields of Fire were part of their criteria for buying. And then 6 months later, then they make that decision because they chose to separate themselves ostensibly for this beautiful lifestyle that they wanted to go have, and then they lose that. I don't know what resources you can bring to bear, because if you're not around one of those hubs, it's really challenging to. I have I lost Pete Nannenberg, a friend who when he retired, and it's the same thing because it actually goes what you said, Doc. It's the same pattern where he retired. It was during COVID, so it was on Zoom, and so me and John Braga were on the VTC with him, and he popped up. We're like, whoa, who's the dude that ate Pete? Like, so 40 pounds heavier than we saw him before, a lot of alcohol involved. But I actually looked up like what was going on with him, and he was leading the Boy Scout troop and was involved in Knights of Columbus, because these are all the indicators where like I can't take losing another one. And so I felt like, okay, so I didn't do anything. But if I don't know what resources that like you collectively are trying to bring to bear so that you can, because a lot of these things are hub based around big soft communities, and a lot of the challenges that are most in need are folks that purposely go remote. I don't know what question is there other than do you have a thought to address that? Can you bring it back to other folks or not? Thanks.
What was your name again, sir, please?
Sean,
I'm sorry about Pete. And, we remember him. We remember the struggle that he was going through. And I recognize that as somebody falling in combat, like they're falling to the wounds that they received in combat. And that I call that the avoidable one. And RHF has chosen to, our metric for identifying the population to serve is based off of an active duty, high operational tempo. So we have an algorithm for where we go to provide our resources, but you're right. It's always about proximity to resources. And in my opinion, and Doc, you would definitely be able to expand upon this. It's the isolation kills. And when you are disconnected and, that forms isolation, then you have an impulsive moment. That's when some of these things start happening. So I think it's just on us, Kaylee, it's on us to change the culture to say that connection is critical. It's like, you might not need it right now, but you will. At some point, if you don't have awareness now, either childhood trauma or something that you experienced in war, it will come back to you. It's only a matter of time. And it might happen when you got your grandchild on your lap, or it might happen when you choose to start pursuing healing. Either way, connection is critical. Like you have to be connected with a group of people that know you and you trust. And that's the only real way that you're going to be able to do anything about it, because it's not your responsibility. Unfortunately, Pete, God rest his soul, that's not your responsibility, man. So that's very difficult to say that, but I can say that in the team room venue. The only thing that I think is a solution is making sure that the family is empowered and they're ready for this thing that we don't know what it's going to look like. So but it's right around the corner. And then making sure that they're connected to resources.
Yeah, the great words. My heart goes out. I truly believe that the opposite of connection is addiction, and that cycle they get into where the blinders come on and there's just this unawareness that they're being pulled away from any supports that they would have had in place, and so ultimately, they're the sense of being all alone. That culture is beginning to change, I believe, in our service members, where, the idea that our mental health, I don't know how I get up here. The idea of mental health is something we need to take care of earlier on. But it's the stigma still exists. I mean, I have to go to great lengths to get to a service member before they need help. Before they're cratering in, before they get to the Farley Center, the ability to get to a service member. This is the lengths I went to get to one. I mean, I started my own company, Bishop and Dice Defense. I disguised it as a tactical supply and training so I can work with them for a year and a half, and then slip in the mental health. Once we develop a relationship. I mean, it takes this long journey to get close enough for them to hear that there might be something we can adjust now before it gets worse. It's so hard. But the other side is the education is beginning to catch up with our service members. There is this idea of resilience training. There's this idea of, being able to decompress and talk about things with your team members, with a therapist, get a therapist before you need a therapist. Those skill sets are beginning to take hold, and that ultimately will prevent the cycle, your friend got in, where he's just isolated. The blinders are on from addiction that I can't even see how much trouble I'm in. And I'm not saying it's hopeless, but when someone's bleeding out without buddy aid, he is going to die. Yeah. So the
science behind it. And I appreciate you expanding upon that. Yeah, we are connected with other resources. I would like to make myself available to help connect you with something that is a little bit more realistic to be able to respond. We have trusted people that we are affiliated with that do have the ability to reach out individually and provide something that has a PhD behind it, or potentially some sort of peak experience to yank them out of this very dangerous mental state that they're in.
To add to Eric's comments for you, OHF does have immediate needs, and if they don't have the facilities, they'll find people that have benevolent donations that they will pay for the facility themselves. I've seen them do it on several occasions where it's not really in their wheelhouse, but they go to one of their donors. It's going to cost 50 grand. They write the check, done. So I would say, like you said, connectivity. Get a hold of them anyway. Get a hold of Eric or Glenn Mason, who's the area regional guy here that's not able to make it here. I'm actually representing OHF as well. But yes, I would say that, the immediate needs program really does work with OHF.
And there is also something that the Farley Center for a long time has done something really cool. I call it like the bat phone or the red phone. If they have a problem child and it's using someone in the SOF community, comes in. But yeah, they have a problem child in treatment. They like get this, they get the phone out and they give me a call like, hey, we got one. You need to come down here. Yeah. And yeah, they send it out of the flare pop flares. I'm vectoring in as hard and fast as I can to go come in their room and sit down and go. And that confrontation with someone they can hear, that's important. You know, it's funny. The SOF community, the spec work community, we need to feel special. We do. Even in our hour of need, I need special help. Yeah. So having that someone come in does make a difference. So having someone, whether it be, you know, someone they served with, having someone that has a similar occupation, someone we can call to send them in, to sit them down, that they can trust a little to hear them, because everyone else has been saying the same thing their whole life. You're the problem. You look what you're doing. You know, you need to change. And they're done hearing everyone else. That's why they're isolated. They don't want to hear it.
Any other questions? Yeah, please come. I have some flyers if you're interested to learn a little bit more about our foundation. If you're interested in supporting, if you text 44321, if you text RHF to that number 44321, we have a way to support our mission. It's called the 18 Delta campaign. So Rick Herma was an 18 Delta by trade, and 18 Delta is a special forces medic, and he ran to gunfire. He ran to, you know, where the danger was. And we believe that that's something that it's consistent with our foundation, that we are a community resource that's out there on the front lines, and we are delivering something that is really fun and exciting, but we're also, there's some healing that's also offered in there. So 18 also represents roughly how much it costs for us to put one family through a program, an event for RHF. So $18 provides either access to a program and an event for a family of 4. And we are able to do some of those events and some of those programs that we get to offer. Ninja Warrior is one of them. That's like our flagship. We own the Ninja Warrior obstacle course. It gets them access to go run Ninja Warrior, and we build a one for little kids too. So it's the cutest thing, seeing little kids running Ninja Warrior. But yeah, $18 can facilitate that, and a monthly recurring donation would be very great. We would be very grateful for it, and that's me pushing the executive director, trying to fundraise every single moment of the day. So I apologize for that.
Oh, thank you, guys. I really appreciate y'all's words. Just what an amazing legacy for Rick. Like knowing that all of that freedom and therapy that's happening, and most of them don't even know what's happening. They're just having fun, and there's no restrictor. So the old school merry-go-round is on. My kid's flying, right? And I have to say, as a kid that grew up in a small town in West Texas, you had me at mutton busted. So if you don't know what that is, you take sheep, you put the kid on the sheep, and then you let it go. And it's just amazing. It's actually probably better than the merry-go-round without the restrictor.
You're not bringing up the trebuchet, which is awesome.
So I got an old 18 Charlie. I hope he's listening tonight. He's probably flying here just because he heard trebuchet and pumpkins. So, so tonight has been great. What an awesome opportunity. I think you agree, just to get chosen to get to do this and be the first one back in person. So we can say we had the record audience in person.
That's right. That's right.
That's good. But I want to, before we close up, I would just want to open up to the group and then also to online. Like, what sticks with you tonight? What really resonated with you? Is there something on your tongue you want to talk about? Or what are you going to walk away thinking about in the short future? And I'll tell you guys, so Sean, he ran away. It's hard to see in these lights. He and I were talking about last night about losing friends. And I got a call today. And it's one of those. Magically, one of my old soldiers showed up today. So super cool. Yeah, no stories. You're not allowed to tell stories. But that's an amazing connection. And it's all you have to do is reach out and touch. And you hit it, Eric, with you're not responsible for them, but you can help them. And that's a big piece. So that's one thing that I'm going to take away is continuing to reach out. And then obviously this time of year, the holidays comes and you feel those pressures. But anybody in the audience want to share what stuck with them or something they want to discuss? It doesn't have to even be any of the 3 topics we brought up tonight.
I want to double back on something real quick. So something we see a lot at MSOFC is, people are like, well, you sit down for family dinner or go have fun. And you're like, really? That's what you're going to tell me? I got bigger priorities. Like, have you not seen all the important things I've done my whole life? And you're going to say, go prioritize that. And the truth is, those things are really hard and they actually are a bundle of their own skills. And so when we think of like sitting down for family dinner or calling a friend or going on vacation, those are the things we assume should come natural, but they don't. They're packed with their own skill sets. And if it's uncomfortable to do them, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you have skills that you need to build and they take time. So one skill takes 6 to 8 weeks to build into your life if you're trying to put it into your life. And if one engagement with a friend actually is 3 different skills that you didn't know were all wrapped into that, can take months, and that's normal. That's a normal discomfort that we need to talk more about because they're not the fluff things that come natural. I have a special needs baby who I spend 6 weeks in therapy with, or 6 hours a week, every week in therapy with. And it is, if you see a young child with developmental challenges and you're taking a 2-month-old, a 6-month-old, a 9-month-old to the speech therapist, to the physical therapist, to the occupational therapist, you start to see how much we take for granted as humans, how much basic function that we think is basic that's not basic. It's really complicated. And so I just want to double tap that how sophisticated normal human actions actually are.
Yeah. And I think Doc kind of got to it when he was talking. It's the pace. I probably know I'm not as good talking with my family as I'm supposed to be, but if I keep running real fast this way, I'll figure that out later. That's the simple one, right? So at our house, 2 teenage girls. So again, Army spouses, love you guys because I've met my kids. We got a simple rule. We sit down to eat every chance we get together at dinner, and there's no phones. And just breaking teenage girls away from phones is crazy. So if you haven't read the book, Anxious Generation, buy it, read it again, and then start implementing it. But that's one of those things. And you go back to the simple Army model of it's PT. I'm supposed to be good at running 2 miles, but if I don't go run 2 miles, but I can find a lot of stuff to distract me from just doing the basic PT stuff. And so that's a great point.
And I think it's a really important part too, to point out that due to military moves and changes, that finding the time to set that to become a normal habit or something normal in our lives is challenging for our families and for our kids. And so that's another piece to that we struggle with or is challenging for us as well.
One thing I was listening to the whispers over here as we were talking about stuff in mental health, and it was the culture change. Got to have a culture change. Culture has to change. The good news is I think it is happening, and real change happens slow. But where I see the change in mental health differences is in the young kids. For them to say, hey, I got a therapist is not a big deal. And I'll give kudos. So I don't do this very often. I'll give kudos to Big Army. So they shifted to where you had your normal medical annual appointments. Hey, I got to go to the dentist. I got to go to the eye doctor. I got to go to audiology, and keep all those tasks up so you're ready to go do what you got to do. But behavioral health wasn't on there. And so you're standing your morning formation, little square humans, and it's specialists. Hey, we need a detail to go do this. I can't do it. I got to go to the dentist. I got to go get it to the physical therapist. I got to go do this. Those people walk out. But if I raise my hand and say, hey, I got to go to behavioral health, there's that weird, awkward silence. And the whole platoon's like, man, that guy, I don't know, like something's up. So they've shifted it to where you're required to do an annual behavioral health assessment, just like dentists. Hey, it's your birth month, go to get your teeth fixed, go see a professional. Because now when that kid that really is getting good help says, hey, I got my behavioral health today after lunch, everybody just thinks it's just another appointment. And so it's normalized. And so that's one area where we're seeing change on the behavioral health side of the house. All right, anybody, any questions, comments, sir?
Well, as a member of the chaplain corps in the Army, I have not heard spirituality mentioned once tonight. I think that's a tremendous part of healing, tremendous part of resiliency. Does do you guys incorporate that at all in your programs?
All right. Yes. Gosh, it's funny. A lot of the work we do in recovery, it's about starting where they're at, and where they're at's in a rough place. And I equate the term spirituality with connection. It's a form of connection with your higher power, a form of connection to the world around you. And with as many different types of religions, of belief systems out in the world, for me, that definition seems to work in trying to communicate with others, that sense of connection with the world outside of you. So coming into Farley, we understand there's a sense of being, disconnected from relationships, from families, from the outside world, from command, and that rebuilding, that, starting from where they're at and rebuilding and able to achieve a place where they are able to accept their path, where they're at, accept the road they're on, and then, how can they connect, not just with their family, not with the world around them, but to their sense of a higher power? That is what the road leads to, is this ultimate connection with the world around them. So they no longer have that sense of being alone. And it's funny that in my personal experience, the road to disconnection, the road to reconnection is, your health comes back, and then your smarts come back, and then your emotions flood back, and then finally you feel connected to the world around you, and then the minute I relapse, I lose that sense of connection with my recovery group, or my sense of a higher power. If I keep drinking, I'm going to lose the emotions are going to numb out again. And if I continue to go down that road, eventually the smarts are going to dim out again. And then if the health points, like a video game, back at the Farley Center. So yes, the path is trying to get to that point where you can reconnect, whether it be the religion of your youth, whether it be your current sense of a higher power, but that is addressed. That is the goal. And if you never want to feel alone again, you've got to learn how to plug back in.
Add to that too. That's the recovery piece from addiction, but I do a lot of grief and trauma work also with our clients. And so much of that is about returning to your sense of connection with your higher power, and the moral injury that Dr. Dice spoke about earlier as well. Oftentimes this is this schism between you and your spiritual life that we can heal. There's evidence-based treatments that do all this work. And of course, we're not trying to take the place of the work that you do. In fact, we would rather work hand in hand. If somebody has a chaplain, we invite them to be a part of the process. We return them to their chaplains. I'm really glad to see you, actually, because I reached out to some of the chaplains here to invite them to this event. So I'm glad that you're here.
And for us, for RHF, so we are in the ministry of connection, and we recognize the power of God in individually, absolutely, that I know I'm saved, and I know my Lord and Savior. And I know John feels the same way, and sorry to share that without your permission. But we also are trying to navigate barriers to entry. So the individuals that need us and they need to feel safe and do they have access to facilities where there isn't somebody talking about PTSD or somebody talking about church or Christianity. So we navigate that. We navigate that with some sensitivities, but absolutely, once that individual gets on our facilities at our park, it's absolutely so clear to anybody who is on their walk that there is a ministry being administered to the community there. But it's not something that we advertise to the community.
It's interesting too. That's a great point because that's one of our pillars. But that's the most sensitive pillar because we're not supposed to be religious, but that's not what we said. We said spirituality. And so figuring that out individually is the thing. And it's funny. So Chrissy, you were telling a story last night and it's all the way back to the beginning. You've got the spirituality with the connections. And you told the story about the family that y'all were trying to get to and cutting trees and dozing up there. And it's a mom with 3 or 4 kids. But it struck me in a small town out there, nobody from church came to check. Nobody from the school came to check. Nobody from the soccer team came to check. Like that's where connection pays huge dividends too, is that community coming back together and taking care of each other. All right. Good. All right. All right. We trained a standard, not time here. So we're good. No, thanks for everybody. So that's the wrap of the first in-person Team House. We really appreciate it. Big thanks to Global SOF for putting this on and their partnership with Military Special Ops Family Collaborative. So thank you, Kaylee, for doing this. It's super important. Really appreciate everybody coming in. And as we get ready to go in the holidays, don't forget that here in North Carolina, it's 2.5 hours away. As they start rebuilding infrastructure, economy is going to play a big part of that. So if you haven't bought a Christmas tree yet, look out there for those tree farms. Look for places you can go out there and spend some time with your family over the holidays and help rejuvenate their economy out there as well.
I just want to thank each of our participants tonight. The Honor Foundation is a transition program for the special operations community so that we help them find and define their next mission so it's clear and they continue to make an impact. And each of you tonight is an incredible example of service members who have stepped outside of the uniform and found your purpose and who are continuing to make an incredible impact. So thank you very much for sharing your stories, for making that impact, and for continuing to help families. Before we adjourn tonight, please take a few minutes to complete the Team Room feedback form. It will be on a QR code that will cycle here shortly. That tells us what you want to see next. And then so we can go the extra mile. Take a couple of minutes just to complete that and give us a little bit of feedback on what you enjoyed, what you'd like to hear, and maybe some new topics for next time.
All right.